Well, we're here at the CCA workbench, and Dave.
Yes, sir.
What are we going to talk about this
Well, we're
week
going to talk
at Rigs and
about
Techniques?
we're going to talk about soft baits and how to rig them for different situations, and how to rig them. Period, because a lot of people don't know. And we're going to talk a little bit about how you use these different style hooks, because there's a lot of different style hooks and a lot of people get confused. I mean, I have friends of mine who called me the other day and says, "Hey man, I'm going bass fishing. I'm using these soft plastics. What do I need for a hook?" And I said, "Well, you need to get one of those big 5/0 wide gaps, something like this." And he calls me back going, "Are you crazy? You can't be using that big hook." And I go, "Well, that's what you use because you got to have a lot of room when you're using a soft bait. You got to have a lot of room when he bites down on it to get a good hook set in them." And a lot of those big worms and big soft baits, they have a lot of body to them, a lot of profile, and you got to have that wide gap to get the hook in them. So
that is the most important analogy based on my experience of fishing soft plastics. Give you another example. Here's a different hook, different style of hook, and you can see here that when the fish bites down, look how much point is exposed. There's not.
Right. That's a regular old style bait worm hook.
Yeah, old style worm hook.
That would be best used with a worm, and a lot of guys use them with those jerk baits, and they miss a lot of fish with them.
Correct. Now this would probably work real well for a little 4-inch sea shad, because they're very narrow, or a little die dapper. Such as this bait here is a little tiny die dapper. You can see how much skinnier it is in profile, you see? But when you have, the key here is you gotta have enough hook exposed that when the fish does bite down, a rubber bait or a plastic bait is soft, so he has a tendency to bite even harder.
Hopefully.
Yeah, that's correct.
Like the salty snack, it's a big fat bait, but it comes with a big fat hook. It comes with that big 5/0 hook inside.
Exactly. And the key here is that there's enough room here that when the fish bites down, look how much is exposed. Right. Now, with that being said, that's the most important part of the analogy in picking the right hook.
These kind of hooks, although I like to use them, the big weight on them sometimes can also be a problem when you get that crush. A lot of times it'll come down and stop on that weight, and you'll have a big ball of soft plastic on the weight, and fish throws it, and you go, "Oh man, that's probably why." But I catch a lot of fish on them too. I like to use the weighted hooks because I can throw a soft plastic a long way. And soft plastics aren't only used for sight fishing. Right. I use them for search fishing. If I'm in dark water that I can't see in, I'll throw a soft plastic with especially a swim bait with a big weight on it that I can toss a long way and cover a lot of ground with. And that's why I use the weighted hooks.
That's another great point. So here's a Bass Assassin with a Bass Assassin hook that's rigged with a weight. And so what ends up happening, Dave, is your presentation is something like this. As you twitching it through the water, it has the ability to work with the nose slightly down, but not like when you have a jig head like this, to where it's going to sink straight down.
Right.
Now, going back to this particular, there's another style of hook where the weight is a little further back. And this, again, is what when we were talking about this before. I like it because
it's smaller. Yeah.
It is smaller. Obviously, it's not going to cast as far, but what it is going to do is this allows you to use this hook for other ways than rigging it somewhat weedless. But again, with the weight back in the curve, now your bait the presentation is going to be more neutral. So it's going to be floating in the water column like this. If you put a jig head in the front of this bait, it's going to tilt down and it bounces on the bottom. If you put a swim bait hook in this, now it's going to have a tendency to swim level, but it's going to be deeper in the water column.
It'll be horizontal.
Exactly. Now, Dave, the other thing that some of the fellas are doing, as you refer to them, is they can also take your weighted hook or non-weighted hook and then put a small piece of tungsten in front of it on the leader. This is what a lot of guys are doing because they like the weedless presentation. When you're fishing in some of those bays, those duck blinds or duck ponds that have hydrilla and grass, and you're looking for those redfish, guess what? You're going to want to have something that's weedless. Certainly, Very, very popular.
Yeah,
Spinner
spinnerbait.
baits. You can change the plastic. You get the vibration like you would get with a spoon.
Right.
That's another way. Now remember, just because our plastic is a paddle tail, the big mistake that guys make when they're fishing paddle tails, Dave, is that they don't simply reel them. They want to twitch them, and a paddle tail bait, a swim bait, is designed exactly for how it's described, to be swam.
The paddle.
Swam. Swim. And so you want that tail to be jubilating and vibrating, just
Right.
like a spoon. If you twitch it, then it vibrates and then stops, vibrates and then stops. The lateral line of that flounder and that trout and that redfish, guess what? It's going to
it'll
break.
stop.
Yeah, so he's not going to feel that. So that's where you run into a problem. And then we can obviously fish them under noise-making corks. You know, the cork does the work, and as you pop it a second time, the bait comes up from the water column into the water column, and kabam, it's all done. And you thought we weren't going to be able to talk for 5
Oh
minutes.
no, I knew we would.
geez.
I assure you, I talked for 4.5.
Yes,
Yes,
you
you
can.
did.
And there's a lot of Rickisms in there. I heard jubilating.
Yes.
That's one of them.